So I'm Charlie Hughes. I've been at UCF for a while, for 42 years now. I'm a professor in computer science, and I play in a lot of different disciplines. As you may notice, I have four other appointments besides computer science, and I co-lead the Learning Science Cluster, and right now I'm the interim director of the School of Modeling, Simulation, and Training's grad program. And I have a lab over in the research park and one over in the College of Education. And so, little background, I started actually 60 years ago as a programmer. I had the good fortune of going to a school where you work 6 months out of the year and you went to class 6 months out of the year. And it was a great experience. And the only problem was I wasn't learning the basis of computer science. And so I went back to grad school, spent time at Penn State, both as a graduate student, as faculty, uh, did a postdoc in between, and then moved to Tennessee, and then eventually as far south as I've gone, which is UCF. My areas of research used to be theoretical computer science. I still teach in that area and enjoy it a great deal, but learning environments has been my goal. It says here from the 1980s, but that's when it became graphical and virtual across the last 4 decades. But prior to that, I was also building learning environments. I've always enjoyed that. Some of the things, I've got some results that I'm very proud of in theoretical computer science, but I don't produce much of that anymore. I built one of the early with Mike Moschel, one of
Charlie, you're muted. Charlie, you're muted.
I apologize. I have no idea how I got muted. I think I just went up too far on the top. Sorry about that. But we built a shared virtual environment that allowed middle school kids in the U.S. to mentor kids who were in the Department of Defense dependency schools over in Germany. And that was a lot of fun. The rest of the stuff I'll talk about in the slides. I still teach theoretical computer science, but I also teach some of the introductory courses in computer science because I love working with undergraduates as much as graduate students. The big area that starting in 2006, I linked up with a faculty member in the College of Education, Lisa Dika, and Mike Hines also, but Mike is retired and Lisa's still around. And we built an environment for helping teachers be better prepared for the classroom called Teach Live. We got funding from NSF to build the technology. We got funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to test it and make sure that it actually was effective. And we got funding from another foundation, Bert W. Martin, to extend it to include characters in our virtual classrooms that represented the broad range of inclusive classrooms that teachers are going to encounter. And we actually had subject matter experts, a boy who was severely autistic. The one in green in the back by the whiteboard there is actually made up from an actual person who owns that character as far as he's concerned, and a girl with Down syndrome, but they didn't want her to appear that way. And so she's in the classroom as well. We've taken this and we started with middle school. That's a high school version. We've gone down to elementary school. We can present these as on a screen. We can present them in a head-mounted display. We can present them in a cave. So we have lots of ways, and it depends upon what we're doing as to what's the most appropriate one. Here's just a quick.
We can help teachers practice specific content before they get into the real classroom.
This is the middle school.
And they can practice their behavior management strategies. And they can work to engage all students. And we get practice working with diverse learners. And we could help them earn micro-credentials for their teaching skills.
Good afternoon, class.
Oh, good afternoon.
How are you doing, Sean?
Oh, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Maria?
I'm doing well.
Reading any new books lately?
Yeah.
What are you reading?
I just started Pride and Prejudice.
Okay, I just wanted to show you that really quickly. You notice that people are able to have actual conversations with the virtual characters. All of those have a puppeteer in the background, but we're actually getting away from that now and working on AI components. We have used this in teacher preparation for the classroom, but also dealing with parents, which is the most stressful thing that most teachers do. Plus administrators, we've used it with our own foundation to prepare people there. We've used it with the College of Medicine and working with kids who are non-suicidal, self-injury. That cutters is the number one. And we're working with the Mount Dora Police Department right now on preparing their police officers for dealing with what look like very stressful situations, but it's more just a communication breakdown that they're having if they're working with, if they have some child who happens to be pretty severe on the autistic spectrum, they may misinterpret their behavior, and we're trying to help them be prepared for that. The big stuff that we got going right now is we've got funded by the Department of Education to work with the UCP, which used to be United Cerebral Palsy, worked with kids who had disabilities, and they continue to do that, and they have schools all around Central Florida and around the country, but mainly we're working with Central Florida. And about 50% of the kids are on the spectrum, and what we want to do is to help them be more successful, get into the workforce, independence. And so what we've done is created a virtual companion for them, and that virtual companion is not puppeteered. It's actually run by us observing stress levels in them, observing what they're doing on the task, whether they're on task, etc. So they're getting some coaching and some calming. And our virtual character can actually synchronize its heartbeat to theirs and its breathing to theirs to help them be mindful and stay on task. We have different virtual characters depending upon the age of the children. The other thing we're doing with them is we're teaching them to control robots, and many of you may have actually met the Dash robot. The way that's typically controlled is using Blockly, which is an MIT-based language that is maintained by Google, and it's open source. But there is an environment by a company called Wonder Workshop, and we tried to work with them to make it easier for these kids who don't have quite the focus that most kids have to work with the robots, and that didn't meet their business model. And so we've actually redone all of the controls for it. Fortunately, the protocols are all open, so we're not breaking anybody's IP to do this, and the software. So we build our own, and this is undergraduates who've been working with me doing that. We also have an NSF grant working with now adolescents, older children, who are bullied quite often when they're in Zoom sessions and other social media contacts. Actually, kids on the spectrum are bullied 5 times more often than other children. And they often disclose private information. And what we're doing is we're building a companion for them that gives them advice, and virtual characters that actually try to probe at them and do very low-level bullying. We don't want to go into high level on this. We have another grant from the Department of Ed where we're working with coaches. And what happens, especially in rural areas, you have students who have special needs, but you have teachers who aren't trained to do it. So what we're doing is working with master coaches and helping them to work with building coaches in every single school to work with the teachers there. And we built a suite of software. This is where I got to hack code the last year. But then I found a really good undergraduate who's now doing that for me. But we build one to do after action and real-time review of what is observed by the coaches. And then we've built a really large database of information for the teachers and the coaches so they can learn various techniques for helping their do better in that. This is just my current funding, and I had gone 2020 no new funding, and then 2021 came along, and it's like the tide came in, and so we got 3 grants from the Department of Ed. One is the one I mentioned, working with robotics and kids. The other one is working with coaches. And then a third one was with Roger Azevedo and Grace Bohenick and all of the faculty over in modeling and simulation. And we got some funding from the Department of Ed to both improve the program, but also build a better pipeline into it, working with HBCUs and other HSI institutions. And we got National Science Foundation funding, an extension of one we were working on GTA training, the new cyberbullying. And then with Ryan McMahon in the lead, working on photorealistic, a database of photorealistic environments for others, to be available to others and for them to contribute to it. And then Gary Levins is leading an effort I'm involved in with other Hispanic serving institutions to try to get more, especially Latinas, into our graduate programs because they are way underrepresented. And just an example of my collaboration, and I cannot show them all, there's just too many of them, but I'll bring up that some of my recent PhD students are now in faculty positions. So Alicia, who is second from the right on that top line, is at North Texas, and Layla is at University of Delaware, etc. I got one at Kennesaw State and all over the place. And I have some collaborators I've worked with forever. And on the lower left-hand corner there is Mike Moschel. Mike's retired, but Mike's the one who got me involved in building environments for kids for learning. And that has been a blessing all my life to do that. So that's my quick run.